Very good morning. I am Mshl Rana. Today we're going to talk about the book that you have recently launched, The Invisible Warriors, the scientific art of fighter controlling. So let me just ask you to begin with, what is it that prompted you to write this book?
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much for initiating this dialogue. Primarily because of the reason that nothing has been written on this subject. And not only in India, it has not been written globally also on this particular subject. While there are a bit of books, those are written purely on air defense, very few of them again. But the fighter controlling being one of the main functionaries of air defense has never been spoken about and never been written. So even if in Indian Air Force books that are talking about the war or this thing, while fighter controllers remain the integral part of the war fighting, and they are equally teaming up with the fighter pilots and also with the other aviators. But there has been no specific mention of their contribution, so to say. There is no recorded history. How have we progressed over a period of time, despite the fact that this remains a very, very important element of air defense? So that was the reason I wanted that this should be known to the people. I mean, you would be surprised that not only in the outside, even within Air Force also, not very many people are clear about the role, relevance, and contribution of the fighter controllers. So that was what prompted me, and this book primarily is on the air defense, but it is from the prism of the fighter controllers because they are integral part of the air defense. So while the book talks about the complete evolution of the air defense and alongside the evolution of fighter controlling and how have these concepts evolved over a period of time. So it is not a book purely on a fighter controlling. It's a book on air defense from the prism of the fighter controllers.
Why do you call it the scientific art of fighter controlling?
This is a skill from the skill, like flying is a skill. So similarly, fighter controlling is also a skill. Because here also, along with the fighter pilots, you get into your mission, together you fight that mission. Every second, whatever is the communication happening between fighter controllers and fighter pilots, every word has an importance, every second has an importance. So it is a skill. It is not just knowing that this equipment is likewise, and there's a whole lot of knowledge that is put into the practice when you are controlling the missions. But it's a skill set. When to speak, when to give a specific command, when to not speak. Also is a so this is a very very precise skill, and that component of this becomes a pure art. Like flying is a skill. It's an art. But to be able to fly or to be able to do that controlling, there's a whole lot of knowledge that is required, and that is a scientific knowledge that is required to be put into practice. You need to know about entire characteristics of your own aircraft, of the enemy aircraft against whom you are controlling your mission to or guiding your mission to. You have to know about the radars. You have to know about radar performances. You have to know about metrology. You have to know about a whole lot of things. I mean, I think I can go on and on. So there are very, very scientific, precise knowledge that you must have, that you will put into practice, in probably your major mission at times gets over in 2 minutes. So that entire knowledge that you have to put it into practice in just those 2 minutes. So that part is a pure science. Until and unless you understand the science of aircraft, unless you understand the science of the radar or the mechanics of each of these radars and each of these aircraft, you will not be able to perform and you will not be able to do with the skill. So you need to know the skill, you need to have the great sound knowledge, and that's why the art and science of the fighter control. When you are vectoring the aircraft through the communication that you have with the pilot of the mission, then your vectoring has to be very, very precise. And that is in terms of there are particular attack profiles that have to be gone into, primarily to avoid the advantageous position to the enemy and giving advantageous position to you. So there are various attack profiles. They are called the beam attacks or even in other things. Then there are specific tactics which are there when you approach the enemy aircraft, those tactics to get out of the missile envelope of the enemy. So those attack profiles have to be very precise. They are calculated. They are, very, very with a precise calculation has to be there. And that's why when I said that every second counts, if you ask your own aircraft to maneuver a second earlier, he may land up in a disadvantageous position. Or if you are not guiding him on a specific path or a specific beam profile to the enemy, then either the enemy may get the advantage or enemy's own radar, the AI radar that the enemy aircraft has, will probably pick you up. So you have to be very, very precise in terms of defeating his missiles, in terms of defeating enemy's AI, and making sure that your aircraft gets into advantageous position for his missile launch and also for acquiring the target on his AI. So there is a lot of science involved in this part.
There is one question which I had to put it up to the directing staff at the TAGD when we were doing the Master Fighter Controllers course. Whole pitch of the theory was trigonometry, all science. I mean, most of it was science. He asked the DS that time, now retired AVM Palsule. I said, sir, you are talking as if we are all science or maths graduates. Some of us are arts graduates. How much do you think is the knowledge of science or this thing is required, or is it mandatory that it is, one person has to be a science graduate? Can an arts person not learn these things? I mean, this is a point I'm just trying to put it from the perspective of the aspirants, who there are a lot of arts students also who are wanting to join. No, since to be a fighter controller, you have to get into the Adam branch and then go to this.
Yes, yes, this is a very relevant question and has probably been asked all over. And we have had certain ace fighter controllers who have been the art graduates. While science has an edge, I'm not denying about it. When you're talking about radar theory, when you're talking about the trigonometry, the attack profiles, when you're talking about the physics and the aerodynamics and whole lot of these things. Obviously, the science, if you have had some understanding of the science, or if you are a science graduate and you have studied, then it becomes easier to grasp these subjects. There are times when not necessarily that this knowledge is good enough. There is an art part of it. Okay, so that skill set is not necessarily come from the science background. That skill set can be by anybody who has a common sense, who has understood the basic attack profiles, understood the basic dynamics, understood the basic radar theories, and will still be able to do it. But I would like to say this, that as you go, I'm not sure whether they have made the science now mandatory, but as you go into more and more complex radars, more and more complex avionics and aircraft, so your syllabus demands a lot of understanding of the science. I will not say that it is not there for the art graduates, but certainly if you are a science graduate, you will have a better grasp of these subjects. It becomes easier. These things can be by the arts graduates. They will find it initially very, very difficult, but I've seen quite a few art background fighter controllers who have done exceedingly well.
I agree with you to that extent. Yes, science gives you an edge, all right. But it's not that if you are an arts person or a commerce person, you are devoid of common sense. And so if you have common sense and you apply logic, I think the training is such that anyone can pick it up without or rather without saying that a person with a science background perhaps would find it slightly easier. One of our earlier podcasts, you did mention that fighter controllers graduated and you were there in one of those graduation parades. So you found that maximum number were engineers.
Yes. There were, I think, out of 22, there were 20 engineers.
If we go into the background history of fighter controlling, how the fighter controlling has evolved in different countries, and how we have probably seen this mature as a very credible force component.
The air defense got its prominence in Second World War, and that too also in primarily between German and UK warfare. So there is where the fighter controlling also was born. Air defense primarily what we understand and what we know of air defense today primarily was organized World War II, and specifically Air Chief Marshal Dowding, who was the CNC of the fighter command. He evolved a system which even most of the countries follow in some with a little bit of modification, and he came out with whole system of air defense where detection from the radars, especially located in a manner that they could detect the enemy radarly, then the system of plotting them, tracking them, identifying them, and then launching your own aircraft to guiding your own aircraft to enemy. Because that time, of course, the warfare was a little different, because the Germans would come in en masse as far as their attack onto British infrastructure or their bases was concerned. Then these, after analyzing their entire pattern, then they would launch these aircraft, which would be controlled by the ground controllers in a position. Like I said, the whole idea of the fighter controller is to position your aircraft in advantageous position so that you can take pot shots at enemy. But then there are other complexities of the aerial combat involved, wherein also the fighter controller provides those critical inputs. But primarily, it started from there. Around the same time, radar development took place, was happening in Russia, was also happening in US, was also happening in France, and little later in other countries. But air defense primarily took shape then. Fighter controlling took shape in World War II. And thereafter, then it evolved over a period of time. Then it went on into the airborne command and control systems, what we say AWACS. Then the controllers started operating from the airborne platforms as well. So that evolved over a period of time. But primarily, near simultaneously, it was coincided with the radar development and the World War II, when aerial engagements were taking place.